Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Hey, good morning. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute. We'll let everybody else join. Good morning. See some familiar faces hopping on here. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. Take a few minutes, let everyone get logged on. Enjoy this YouTube and take it just morning, everybody. We'll start in just a second. Let a few more folks join here. Good morning, everybody. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for being here. Glad you're able to join us. I'm gonna mute the music. All right. Hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. We're glad that you're here. Welcome to Creative Mornings. We are just thankful that you're able to join us in this virtual platform. Good to see some familiar faces and names joining here. My name is Blake, and I help organize the Atlanta chapter of Creative Mornings. And, you know, our mission is to gather the creative community in Atlanta because we love our city. We are for our city, and we want to see the creative class here continue to rise up and do amazing, great things. And so we hope today that you maybe connect a little bit with someone that you haven't seen in a while or that you didn't even know. We'll give you a chance to do that. And then we also hope that you get a little inspiration from our time together. And hey, you know, we've been doing this virtual format for a while now. We are all getting very accustomed to virtual platforms, and it's not what we would prefer. We would love to give high fives. We would love to give hugs and see your faces and be together, but you know, that's just not possible. And we're thankful to have a safe technology like this here on Zoom that we can at least still gather. So thanks for being here. I am curious, where are you tuning in from? I want to know, like, shout out in the chat your neighborhood. If it's not Atlanta, what city are you dialing in from? If it's not Georgia, what state are you in? Oh, wow. Okay, I see some Decatur. Kirkwood. Yeah, come on, Kirkwood. Eastlake, Reynoldstown, St. Petersburg, Florida. There we go. Any others from outside of the state? Going fast. Good morning, Clarkston, Adair Park, Peachtree City. Okay. Miami. Did I see a Miami in there? I think so. Buckhead, Mapleton. Nice. All right. Well, thanks for joining wherever you're dialing in from. If you're outside of Atlanta, this next slide won't really apply to you. But if you are, quick reminder, you should go get your free coffee. We cannot have Creative Mornings without coffee. It does not work. We've tried before. So if you need to get a cup of coffee, it's on us. We're partnering with Full Commission this month over in Grant Park. If you want to go get a coffee or a pastry, go before noon today. Just tell them you're with Creative Mornings and they'll put it on our tab. So make sure you do that. We love Full Commission and we're happy to partner with them. So next, I want to pass it over to Malik on our Creative Mornings Atlanta team to give us some Zoom housekeeping best practices and tips. Malik.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Creative Mornings community, and Happy New Year. I'm so glad that you're all here. And I'm going to give you a few tips to help your streaming experience run smoothly this morning. First up, you can change your name. You can add an emoji, go by, whatever you want to go by this morning. Just do that by clicking on the participants menu and clicking on more next to your name and then rename yourself. There's also different views on Zoom. So occasionally we will go into speaker view, but if you like gallery view, just go to the top right and click on gallery view. Um, in just a few minutes, we will also ask an icebreaker question and then enter breakout rooms. This is your chance to meet somebody new and get a good conversation going this morning. If you're introverted like I am, I know this sounds like boring and rough and stressful, but I promise you'll get through it. I've made it through plenty of times. You all got this. After our talk today, there will also be a Q&A session where you can ask a question directly to Melissa. So let's practice on how we're going to do that. Um, if you could right now, just click that reactions button at the bottom panel and click raise your hand. Yes, look at all those lovely hands. Awesome. After our talk, we will see your raised hand and we are going to unmute your mic. And at that point, you can ask your question. We're going to then unmute you again, and Melissa will answer your question. Sounds great, everybody? Cool. See some head nods. Awesome. Good morning. Well, back to you, Blake.
Thanks, Malik. We're so excited to bring this to you free today. And in order to do that, I want to thank some partners on a global level. First and foremost, MailChimp. We love MailChimp. If you've been to any of our events before, you know that MailChimp has been a sponsor and a partner of ours since day one for 9 years. They have been providing food and coffee and just the resources we need to pull this off every month. We could not love a partner more than MailChimp. So they're not only a local partner, they're also the official partner with Creative Mornings Global for all things marketing. And maybe you've seen this just kind of on social media or an email, or if you're just paying attention to what MailChimp is up to, maybe you've seen MailChimp and Company. This is a partner program that they have. So if you're a freelancer or an agency, they will teach you how to level up your MailChimp skills and how to create a more sound business. So be sure to check that out. We'll drop a link in the chat so you can find out more. So big virtual round of applause for our friends over at MailChimp. Also want to give a shout out to Basecamp. They're our official global partner for project management. So if you need help staying organized, which you know some of you creatives do, you might want to check out Basecamp. They also have a new email platform called Hey. If you want to use that, if you want to streamline your email, be sure to check it out. We'll drop a link in the chat as well. And then last but not least, we have a new partner, Skillshare. Maybe you're familiar with Skillshare. They have some amazing content. It's a great learning community where you can learn all kinds of nuanced little things. So if you are interested in taking an online class, they're actually offering a 1 month free membership for all Creative Mornings attendees around the world. So if you are interested, you want to go just check it out, see what kind of classes you can take. They're video classes, you just click play and you watch it. You don't have your Zoom camera on. It's not a weekly thing, but you can learn some really interesting parts about being a creative. So I would encourage you to go check that out. We'll drop a link in the chat as well, and you'll be able to do a free month if you are interested. All right. Next up, I am so excited to have Ashley Hayes with us today. She is a poet and spoken word artist here in Atlanta by way of Chicago. Her nickname is Big 30, and that's for consistently getting a perfect score when she competes with slam poetry. She's one of the most accomplished poets around, and she had a poem for colored girls who don't need Katy Perry when Missy Elliott is enough. That went viral, and Missy Elliott actually showed up at her house. So no big deal. Missy Elliott just knocked on her door. I'm so excited to have Ashley Hayes with us. She has a new podcast called Hayes's Higher Learning. That's an educational podcast for creatives. You should go check it out. Please welcome to the stage, the virtual stage, Ashley Hayes.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Creative Mornings, for having me. I'm so excited to be here, even though we're distant. And I am so excited about the topic today, which is promise. I had a lot to think about in terms of promises. And so as I sat to write this poem, I thought about the agreements we made. We lost our Queen Mother, Cicely Tyson, last night. And I thought about promises that we make to those who have gone before us, promises that we make to ourselves and each other, and these sort of collective agreements that we walk in. So this poem is not yet titled, but it is about those agreements, about those promises. And I hope that you take some of this with you. It will not be in vain. The water, the fire, the smoke, the seeds planted without promise of harvest. Say, I be good fruit. Say, I promise to do right or become better in the trying. Promise to be a good steward. Promise to remember grace even when I feel most vengeful. Promise to remember love even when I think it don't remember me. Promise these words, be for building, for making new and hold, be for mending, be bridges over troubled waters. Promise to swim even if my water's troubled. Promise to rest. Promise myself days off, where my self-worth is not determined by how many things I have crossed off my to-do list. Promise to be tender to myself first, then to the mothers and the matriarchs, to the ones society pretends not to see. Promise to see you and all your imperfect glory. Promise to observe without judging. Promise to listen without attempting to fix anything. Promise to remember that your dreams be just as important as mine. Promise to teach you what I know and learn when it's your time to teach me. Promise this journey be made in good faith. Promise if I can't have a good day, not to ruin somebody else's. Promise to share the big piece of catfish at the family reunion. Promise not to be too petty when the mean girls incite battle. Promise to fight only as much as is required to be free. Promise to dance often and sing loudly, albeit badly. Promise to remember you, even when you have forgotten me. I promise to be light. Promise not to walk heavy. Promise to let go when it's time to let go. And to hold on to those who hold on to me. Promise to ask, even when I fear the answers. Promise to let my love do the talking more than I let my pain. Promise to be sweet. Promise to be here, to be present, to honor this moment as it is and not as I wish it would be. Promise love. Promise love. Promise always. So thank you all very much for tuning in to this poem about promises. You can find me at ashleyhayes.com. I pray that you promise to allow more poetry into your living rooms, into your lives. And I hope you promise to always hydrate, moisturize, mind your business, and wash your damn hands. I'll see you all later, Creative Mornings.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That was amazing, Ashley. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much for doing that this morning. That was so personal and authentic and you. I'm going to share a couple of local announcements that we have this morning. But that's a really hard act to follow. Oh, man. Okay. So the first local sponsor that we have this morning is from Matchstick. It's where I, myself, Blake, Andrew, the Creative Mornings team, that's where we work. We're the brand identity house of the South, killing the game 5 days a week, 24/7, something like that. We make branding solutions for a bunch of companies. So check out our cool work. We're always doing amazing stuff. Um, our next we have a podcast that we just launched that Blake actually hosts. It's called A Change of Brand. It has a lineup from MailChimp to Dunkin' Donuts to Dropbox to Airbnb to Warner Brothers, big names, and it talks all about their rebranding processes. So if that's something that excites you, like it excites me, check it out wherever you get your, you listen to your podcast. A Change of Brand, check it out. And we also want to thank C Spark Go. They helped us out with our social media this month, and we're always appreciative towards them. Um, Now we're going to head into breakout rooms, and the prompt question that we have this morning for the breakout rooms is: What is promising for you in 2021? See you in 8 minutes. Talk about this question with each other, and hopefully you get to meet somebody new.
You were able to unmute, turn your camera on, say hi. If you're introverted, you did it. You did it and it was worth it. You know it was worth it. You get intimidated and you get scared and you don't like that. But then afterwards, you're like, okay, I get it. Humanity, we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to connect. So hopefully you had some good conversations. I am so excited to introduce our speaker today. So our topic is promise. We were brainstorming what would be a good angle on that for our city and for finding a creative leader. And we had heard about the A Pledge, which you'll learn a little bit more about in a minute, which just felt like this amazing promise to the creative community in Atlanta, where a lot of agencies and creative groups were coming together, committing to see more diversity in the marketing agency world. So we're going to hear a little bit about that, but we're also going to hear more about just Melissa's story. So I am excited to introduce her. She is a Miami native, and she is the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for your Atlanta Hawks and the State Farm Arena. She was previously at Turner Broadcasting, and fun fact, she oversaw and managed the rebranding of Court TV to True TV. She's won all kinds of leadership accolades and awards. She recently released her first book titled From Ball Girl to CMO. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Melissa Proctor.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I'm happy to be here. 305 represent. Saw the shout outs. Well, now, thank you everyone for having me. Really was moved by Ashley's poem around the idea of promise, and especially the idea of making a promise to someone when you're young, or like the idea of family members. And so for me, this whole idea is the premise of what this presentation is. But I got to start it out with appreciate all the shout outs and the love on Instagram. But you know how it started, you can see Michael Jordan, but behind him, that's me with a mop back in the day when I was a ball girl for the Hawks here, to how it's going from ball girl to CMO. And I made a lot of promises to myself and other people in order to get from how it started to how it's going now. And so the very most important and the biggest promise I made was to my mother. And growing up, this is the one thing she would tell me all the time. She's like, Mel, no matter what it is, always do your best. Right now I have a 6-year-old daughter and I tell her the same thing all the time. But it was, if you're in school and you get a C in that math class, I know you hate math, but did you do your best? Because if it was your best, I will love you and that C to the depths of my soul. And that was some of the most important knowledge or lesson that I got as a kid, because that idea of always doing my best has stuck with me. And I know when I'm not giving it my all, and I know when I'm really doing it. And, you know, throughout my life and my journey, I'll share a little bit about how important this was and even how important it is to me to this day. So, you know, looking back, of course, it's important to have a gratuitous, incredibly embarrassing picture. This is me, Miami 305, circa 1980 something, fanny pack and all. And I, you know, had amazing parents. I think this is my only family picture, me and my mom and my dad. This is back in parts of the Caribbean or something at Disney World back in the day. Clearly there was no CGI, nothing like that. But, you know, had great parents. My mother was from Belize, Central America. My father was from Jamaica. And I was a first generation born here in the United States. And so they put everything they had into me. And one of the things that my mom really cultivated was my desire to be an artist. And so many people don't know, but I started out my life and my career in the arts, fine arts, drawing, painting, graphic design. I went to magnet school in Miami for middle school for the arts. I went to design and architecture senior high, where I focused on graphic design in high school. And I always had a passion for art. And so in the spirit of my mom, always do your best, when I was in high school, because of my love for art, you know, she was like, well, what do you want to do? And I really, you know, liked painting. So, you know, I ended up getting a lawyer to help manage my work and started selling it and doing gallery exhibitions in high school. But, you know, at the same time, I also had a passion for basketball. Mind you, I never played ball a day of my life, but I had a cousin in Miami who loved watching the Miami Heat. And so when I was 15, and I told my mom I wanted to get a job, and she, in her same always do your best fashion, she's like, well, you're just not gonna get any job. She's like, you're gonna get a job of what you're gonna do for the rest of your life. How she knew that, she was a registered nurse. And when she was growing up, you were either gonna be a nurse, a teacher, or a stay-at-home mom. those were her options in Belize. So she said, Mel, if you want to work, what do you want to do? I told her I wanted to become the first female coach in the NBA. And she was like, all right, cool, get a job in the NBA. I don't even think she knew what NBA stood for, but she laid down the gauntlet. And with that, I had no choice but to do my best and go get a job for the Miami Heat. So I wrote a bunch of letters, made a bunch of calls, was incredibly harassing, persistent, depending on what way you want to look at that. And ultimately, they called me and told me to come in for an opportunity to help work for the team. The time they were all ball boys, and I was the first girl. So they changed the title to team attendant. But at that time, I became the first team attendant or ball girl for the Miami Heat. And, Kobe, my rookie year was his rookie year as well. And so that was, me in high school, and had the opportunity to cross paths with a lot of amazing people and learn a ton. And in that job, I did my absolute best. From not knowing how to rebound or pass, I got taught by the players on the court. I had assistant coaches helping me teach how to set drills for the players before games. And that opportunity really helped open up my eyes to not just the world of basketball, but really just how to relate to people. Coming out of that, I met someone who worked on the court for the Heat that told me about Wake Forest for undergrad, and didn't know what college I was going to go to, but ended up at Wake Forest, go Deeks. And it was an amazing opportunity. I got there on an art scholarship. So really still being able to cultivate my love and passion for creative in order to get this education at Wake. And then, when I was going to graduate, applied for a job at the NBA, they actually turned me down and told me I was too creative, which I was like, I don't even know what that means. But I later learned that NBA stood for nothing but attorneys at that time. And so a woman in the communications department, she was actually an assistant, said, Melissa, have you heard about this internship? It's at Turner Broadcasting. Didn't know what Turner was. It's called T3, the Turner Trainee Team. And it was an 11-month paid internship to go and work at Turner Broadcasting. And all they said was, send us your talent in a project. And so I created this. At the time I had an IBM ThinkPad, nominal design equipment. Those were some remote controls of my roommates in my dorm room. But I made this magazine that was all about myself and my brand. And Turner said, you sold yourself so well to us. We think you would do an amazing job of selling our content to consumers. And that's how I got my very first job at Turner Broadcasting. But while there as an intern with a huge afro, I made no money. So I called up my old boss from the Heat and said, hey, can I get put on for the Hawks? What you think? And they said, all right, come on. And so my first year here in Atlanta, I was actually a ball girl on the court for the Hawks. The cool part of that is that the Hawks had only girls on the court, which was amazing. You could see Dominique Wilkins there in the corner. But it was a very different time, and it was an amazing experience or opportunity. So while in the evenings, I had the chance to work on the court and still, fulfill my passion for basketball. During the day, I was in the office. And the difference is, in the office coming out of college, no one in my department looked like me. And it was a very interesting experience in corporate America out the gate, because when I started on my team, I would joke and say that everyone on my team looked like they shopped at Banana Republic. They were amazing. They were super stylish. And I was not that. I was in Jordans and sweats every day, but I knew that I was different and didn't necessarily fit in the culture of that work environment. And so, they would go to lunches, and initially I got invited, but then once I started working, I didn't get the invitations. And one day I sat down with the then president of the network, who always met with the interns to ask how the experience was going. And so, I said I was having an amazing time. I was learning a ton. I enjoyed the work, but I didn't necessarily feel like I fit in. And the best advice that I could have gotten at that stage in my career, in my life, was, we hired you for that afro on the cover of your magazine. Everything that you bring to this environment based on your culture, your West Indian heritage, all of that, be true to yourself, because if you're not doing that, you're doing us a disservice in this company, and we're not going to be able to be better because we're not going to be aware of all the things that you bring to the table. And so in my young mind of thinking I needed to assimilate into the culture in order to fit in, I needed to do the exact opposite to really begin to thrive. And without that experience at that stage of my career, I definitely don't think that I would be where I am today. So the idea of always being authentic and true to who you are was important. And coming out of that, I really began thinking of and met mentors that talked about guiding principles. And this one was a really important thing for me. So through all the jobs and the work that I've had, the experiences kind of built these guiding principles. I call them my starting five. And I wanted to share them with you because I think it's important. It's almost a promise that you make to yourself. And I use this as a filter in any opportunity that comes my way and conversations that I have to just make sure that I am in line with my guiding principles and my values. So one is I always need opportunities that allow me to be both creative and strategic. I know that that really gets me. If I'm all creative, it doesn't work for me. If it's all strategic, it doesn't work for me. But I know if I can marry the two, that's my sweet spot. The second is I get bored super quick, y'all. So the idea of being able to add new tools to my personal toolbox, whatever job that I have, if I can do it in my sleep, I don't need to be there. The desire to grow and learn and change is really important. The third one is my mom was horrible with money growing up, like lights getting cut off. And so I promised myself, I said, like, I always want to pay my bills on time, regardless of what it is. If I can pay it on time or ahead, then I am winning. After I had my daughter, I decided that, it's also important for me to be able to invest in her future, which is something that I had learned a lot about when I was younger. The idea of work-life harmony was important. And I was an only child growing up. My mother was older and disabled when I went to college. And so I spent most of my adult life being a caregiver. So the ability to have to leave wherever I'm working to go and care for her, and now my father, much in the same in my daughter, I have to have that flexibility and work-life harmony, because without it, I would not survive. And I think that the final thing, kind of related to that initial experience, I had to be able to bring my whole self to work every day. So to be a woman and an executive who's African-American with locks and a nose ring and unapologetically myself consistently, even to my picture and my headshot, people like, you can't do that. You're a CMO of an NBA team. It's like, why not? That's really important. And so not only has this idea of bringing my whole self played into my professional life, but also into how I relate with other people. And throughout my career, I've been able to work on a number of amazing projects that all really encapsulate that idea of the promises that I made to myself, even to the most recent one with the Pope blessing an MLK jersey that the Hawks have had the opportunity to work on with the King Estate is amazing. But I know if I didn't have the ability to bring my entire self to everything that I do and be able to speak up and use that voice, those things would have never happened. And it takes me also to a more personal conversation at Octane, RIP Octane. I know lots of these creatives on this call have probably spent many times there. I know I have as well. But a few years ago, there was a head of a local agency, Jeff Hillmeyer, that I'm now great friends with. And he and I had coffee at Octane just to catch up. And he had recently started Dragon Army, one of his nuclear current agencies. And at that time, because it was so new, he would send these emails out that just kind of shared the progress of how the agency was going. And he had sent out a recent image of his team, I think on a cruise. And I saw it and I thought about it and I said, man, I love Jeff. I love the work that he's doing. But it took me back to my first experience at Turner, where I didn't see many people that looked like me. And I said, for a local agency here in Atlanta to not really have a lot of diversity, that's not cool. And so, in the honor of doing what I thought was my best, he and I had this conversation and I was very upfront and open and transparent with him. I said, you guys are awesome. You're doing great stuff. But have you thought about, the makeup of the city of Atlanta and the makeup of your agency? And he was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I just read a podcast. I was listening to a podcast. I just read this book. What can I do? And we had a very open and honest and transparent discussion about that. And in my role at the Hawks, I've had many times that agencies would come and pitch business to us where no one across the table looked like myself, our target audience, our players, or even representative of the city. And I would ask like, hey, how diverse is your team? And they would, stumble on their words trying to figure out an answer to hopefully get the job. And in working with Jeff over time, I saw that he was incredibly committed to this work personally. And then we followed up some years or time after that. And he said, look, I've really taken this seriously. Fast forwarding to the events of last summer, he called myself and a number of folks and got together and he said, you know what, I really want to do something of meaning and substance in this city to help change the landscape in the marketing and creative and agency world. And so this idea of Agency Pledge was born. And I'm so honored to be a part of this team. Here are some images of members of the founding team who all are amazing folks. I know some of you may be on the call today, so thanks for representing. And we are at the very beginning stages. There was so much passion and desire to really create change from the folks on this team. And just being a part of that in the discussions has been amazing. And we would invite all of you to help join us. We are at the beginning and there's still a lot of work to be done. On one of our most recent calls, we kind of started talking through what exactly is our purpose? How do we define it? And so to really think about how do we contribute meaningfully to the eradication of systemic racism? Like, that's important. And how we're going to do that is to match the diversity of the marketing advertising agencies in Atlanta to that of our city by 2030. And for that, we're not just asking agencies to take a pledge, but also brands, and making sure that as you're hiring agencies and looking at the people you're working with, that they're representative as well. But, we plan on doing this in a lot of different ways, by being thoughtful and acting with urgency. One of the things that I give Jeff so much props for is when we got our initial group together and we had a call, it's so easy to want to make things perfect or to know exactly what it's going to be. And we said, you know what, this has to be a work in progress. We have to be able to innovate and ideate and partner with people in our city and really be focused on results and keeping people accountable. So the fact that we met, towards the end of last year, and now this is alive with, a website and conversations and media and people that are excited and signing up and taking the pledge is amazing work. And so we're going to do this by, acting on empathy. We're going to work with persistence. We're going to require transparency, which was born out of that initial conversation that Jeff and I had, and really just fighting for equity for all. And we really started getting to how do we really want to do that? And the idea of being able to reach creatives and brands and agencies and connect them together, being able to work on recruitment. So making sure people aren't going to the same pools over and over again, really thinking about DE&I and how that looks in different organizations. Everyone doesn't have the opportunity to hire a chief diversity and inclusion officer, but ultimately, once you can get that talent in the door, how do you retain that talent? And I think that's most important. So how are we collectively going to work together on addressing bias in different agencies, the lack of leadership, making sure that when people get there, they feel like it's a fit for them culturally and that they're encouraged to do the best work and to stay there. While this is all, in the beginning stages currently, I invite you all to take the pledge, do this with us. Signing up today, we are having initial conversations, putting together focus groups. We want to learn and grow and build collectively. And so the apledge.com is the site. If you are on it right now in front of your computer, please go there, sign up right now to take the pledge. We truly appreciate it. And ultimately, we're all here to do our best. And so I appreciate being here. Thank you again for the invitation, Blake and team. And if you want information on the book, From Ball Girl to CMO, you can visit my website, melissamproctor.com, or feel free to hit me up on the gram at Melissa M. Proctor as well. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Melissa. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing that. The A Pledge is so exciting. Just thanks for your work with that. Big shout out to Jeff Hillemeyer, who connected you and I also, and to everyone else who's part of that core team launching it. So great. It's so incredible, so inspiring, so relevant. Thank you. We want to open up the floor now for questions for Melissa. So we went over this. We practiced, y'all. We can do it. We can do it. If you have a question for Melissa, raise your hand. We will call on you. We will unmute you. We trust you. We will unmute you and you get to ask your question directly to Melissa. So we will open up the floor. Oh, looks like Joe Coffin to raise his hand. Come on, Joe.
Go deep.
Wow, you trust me with unmuting. Amazing. First of all, thank you, Melissa, for all the work you're doing, especially the A Pledge. It's an amazing initiative that will transform our city. And one of the premises of the A Pledge is that agencies that transform themselves in the next 10 years will outperform those that don't, will be a better agency. But my question for you is about creativity. I know you bring your creative self to work every day. So give us an example of leveraging creative in an unobvious way at your work. So is there something that you did that you had to pull out the old creativity, made a big difference?
It's funny because I talk about when I started my career, some people have a superpower. And I think for me, one of them was always my ability to design. So there would be a need to design a logo for a new initiative. and they would either talk about going out to agencies or whichever. And I'm like, hey, I can take a shot. And they're like, oh, okay, well, cool, go ahead and try it. And then I would do something and it would be great or successful. And that was a good thing. I am very far from that now. I see Devin Carter, one of our creatives on our team, on a call, represent, go D. Like, I don't have that skill in the same way anymore. So I really look at my creativity as how can we have a creative solution to a business challenge. And so one of those examples I'll give is our MLK jersey. When I came on as a CMO of the team, we were in the process of consistently redeveloping the idea of what a city edition uniform should be for the Atlanta Hawks. And so the first year was our 50th anniversary. Okay, we'll do that on the 50th. We actually had a previous one that was kind of black and volt. Then we looked at Peachtree as an idea, and looked at, okay, well, Peachtree, obviously Atlanta. And then we got to this place of like, what's next? And so creatively, the idea of looking at what's really impactful and meaningful to the city of Atlanta, what can we design now that 3 years from now will still be relevant? And at the same time, how do we, elevate the work that we're doing? Each year, MLK Day was a really important initiative for what we would do as a team on court. But, creatively saying, how about if we took the idea of honoring MLK through a uniform and creatively finding unique ways to work with the King Estate? We didn't necessarily have all the funds of these huge leagues. And so it took a lot of creativity and really and strategy, which is kind of marrying that creative and strategic, which I do think is my strong point now in order to get to the point where we are for this execution. So, I mean, a couple of examples, but now I think it's really in the perception of how to approach business in an unorthodox way. That's probably how my creativity is evident on a regular basis.
Love it. That's awesome. All right. Looks like Kara has a question. Let's go ahead and unmute Kara and ask away.
Hi, first of all, I just want to say thank you everybody for making this possible. Melissa, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So you said you were incredibly harassing and persistent when you were looking for a job with the Heat. And so I'm just kind of wondering where you would draw the line versus like what's too aggressive, what's acceptable when looking for an opportunity.
That's a great question, because at the time I was in high school, I didn't know any better. I just needed to get a job. My mom didn't give me any options. So I was like, whatever I have to do. And I would write letters, because this is pre-email. So literally pen on paper, write letters, and I would draw all over them to try to stand out. What I've realized is that desire or finding a unique way to make yourself visible was important. And I think at the time he saw me, but I didn't realize that he saw me because he would call me back. Like, we had conversations. So I just didn't know that I didn't have the emotional intelligence at the time to know when to fall back, which was, okay, I'll call you. Like, all right, it's chill, man. Like, he said he'll call you, he'll call. But what I'll say now is, and we're still friends. He still works for the Heat. Like, we talk about this. And he was like, you were so persistent in wanting that job. He's like, I got to give her a shot. So in that instance, it was a positive. You got to be able to know your target audience. And for some people, if they're not calling you back and they're not responsive at all, like, that's telling you something in a very different way. The one thing, and I write about it a bit in my book, is you really want to figure out how you can be an asset to that person, not a liability. So even if it's a job opportunity, you're reaching out and you do get the conversation. And, the question that I asked initially in my career was with the head of branding for TNT. When I first met her, I was like, what keeps you up at night? What's your point of pain or your challenges? And she told me. And then I went home and I came up with ideas to help solve her challenges and presented them the next day. That immediacy and desire to really help and to give, but also to give a good strategic answer, I think is what led me to build a great relationship with her and ultimately to get a branding role at Turner. So I'd say when you do get the opportunity, you can be persistent. Asking for coffee 55 times won't help you. You got to kind of take it to the next level. So in my mind, that next level is, how do you make yourself an asset to that person, not just a liability and sucking up their time?
I love it. Great question. I've got a question for you, Melissa. I want to know more about, your role over the Hawks brand. You are in a position to make strategic, creative decisions. You probably have agencies and others on your team coming to pitch you ideas. How do you think about the Hawks brand? What's important to you with the Hawks brand? Like, how do you say yes to ideas? How do you say no to ideas? Talk to us a little bit about just like your governance and oversight with the Hawks brand.
Sure. No, that's a great question. And I think the one thing that I have, and I'm so glad about it, I think a lot of my background and even working in creative brings that, is good ideas can come from anywhere. So it's not always about pitching to an agency. It's not always about an RFP process. Let's look inside first. And so partnering with our teams internally, if someone has an awesome idea, like, hey, let's bring it to the table. Sometimes it may be strategically not feasible for some reason. Sometimes it's a budgetary restriction. And there's a lot of that, especially right now in this COVID landscape. We are in a very challenging situation where I find you get more creativity out of people and teams out of desire because you have to do it. But overall, steel sharpens steel. So I want people to challenge and push back and ask questions. And I really empower my team to come up with the ideas strategically and to say, hey, this is why. And as long as we can articulate the reasons why it's a good idea and it falls within our, filters of the things that we need as an organization, I'm all for it. And I think what's most important is if we fail or do something that doesn't necessarily work out in the way that we expected, that's cool. We learned something, as we either learn what not to do next time or have some best practices that we can take into the next initiative.
That's awesome. Thank you. Love it. All right, we have another question. Puya, we'll unmute you, and if you want to go ahead and take over and ask your question, go for it.
Hey, Melissa, thanks for sharing your story. Building off what you just said, what's been the best mistake you have ever made?
The best mistake I have ever made was probably taking a job at Turner with a digital health and wellness startup that every mentor around me said would not work and would fail. And I said, well, I don't care because I want to learn and I have the opportunity to help create a brand that no one could ever imagine or hear about. And spent about a year and a half building a brand called Upwave that you've never heard of. No one's ever heard of it because about 6 months after we launched the brand, one CEO left, and another CEO came in, and the last business started was the first one cut. And so myself and about 35 members of my team got laid off. And at the time I was 8 months pregnant. And so people would say, oh man, dude. And I had a great job with Cartoon Network and Adult Swim before. People were like, why would you take that job? And I was like, I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow. And that natural desire and curiosity really drove me. Fast forward 2 months after I, got laid off, I had my daughter. I went to a draft party as a fan and I run into Steve Koonin, who was a leader at Turner who left to be CEO of the Hawks. And he said, hey, Melissa, I need your help building a brand. And later on, I learned that he had a no poaching policy in his time at Turner. So he couldn't take talent from Turner over to the Hawks. So had I not gotten laid off from that job that people told me not to take because it would suck, I would probably not be in this job right now. And so while the perception of that could have been seen as a mistake of like, why would you go do that? I'm so glad that I did.
Wow, amazing. I love how things happen like that.
Everything happens for a reason.
I love it. All right, there is another question. We'll do one more. Justin Smith, we'll go ahead and unmute you and you can ask your question to Melissa.
Hey, Melissa, Cartoon Network alum here as well.
Yeah, Justin.
So I love the unique Atlanta elements that have been brought to the Hawks. How do we bring something like that to the other teams here in Atlanta and create a sense of community amongst those teams?
Well, I think that's a great question. And ironically, we have conversations all the time, myself and Zimmerman over at the Braves or, Morgan over at the Falcons, we all talk to each other. And so there's definitely a camaraderie personally. And I would think that some of those teams would say they absolutely bring those elements just in a different way. I think what's important, and for us at the Hawks, the idea of being true to Atlanta is kind of the mantra that we've built our building on, that we really look at our campaigns against. But there's also a different lever that we work with based on our ownership, being personally really invested in wanting to help, create opportunities for economic empowerment in the city and doing things like voting. And then personally, it's kind of the flavor that each team brings. We've always looked at our target audience as next generation Atlantans. So what is the future of what we want to do? So we may bring in different artists than other teams would based on who our target audience is and what we really want to portray as a brand. So I feel like every team has shades of that. It's just a little bit different based on their target and their sport. And I think the league, as overall, the NBA does a great job of really leaning into pop culture and to players and the voices And so I think we benefit from that a little bit because Atlanta's like the center of the universe right now. So it's a good thing, but I think it's happening. It's probably just a little bit different than the way that you envision.
All right, we've got one more question that we can go to. Kim Weatherspoon, we're going to unmute you and you can ask your question when you're ready. Come on, Kim, you can do it.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Good morning, Melissa.
Hey, good
We met
morning.
some time ago. You were so kind and gracious to have coffee with me back when you were at Turner, and that was so inspirational to me at the time. But my question for you is with the A Pledge, trying to see how I could be of value or how a person can be of value if you're not in the agency realm, if you don't work for an agency. My wheelhouse is in digital technology. So building websites, mobile, project management of those different projects and products. So I know I have been many times in a situation where the agencies that we're working with, no one looks like me. So I definitely understand it from that aspect. But I haven't been in a position where I'm actually hiring that agency. So just on the other side of the fence, how could I be effective by being a part of the A Pledge team?
Well, one, thank you for asking the question and good to see you again. Two, please sign up right now. So one of the things that we're doing, and literally on our last call we talked about, is just how do we get a focus group of people of color together to ask those questions, like what are those needs? What are the challenges? How can we really approach this in a thoughtful way where it could be anything from recruiting to your company or your brand signing up to be a part of that pledge, and understanding that even though you're not the one making the decision on hiring the agencies, really being thoughtful and being the one to point out and say, hey, you know what, they didn't sign the pledge, or, you know, look around, because some of that is really just having the voice and standing up and raising your hand, where a lot of people don't do that because they don't think that they can. So I would encourage you to please just sign up to be a part of it. You don't have to be an agency because, like I said, it really does relate to the brands. And ultimately, I mean, the goal or the hope is to take this thing nationally. We just want people to be more aware, because that awareness itself has a trickle down effect. And to Joe's point, it makes better business. And at the end of the day, that's what we want across the board. So please, 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 if you haven't already, to everyone on the call, sign up. But thank you for your question.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Everyone give her a virtual round of applause. Thank you for being such an inspiring leader. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for giving us some of your time today. We're so grateful. Well, that is a wrap for us today, everyone. Just want to give a quick plug before we do wrap up. February 26th will be our next event. Our theme is Divergent. So please keep an eye out on your email. Make sure you go to our website, creativemornings.com, click on Atlanta, join our newsletter. That's how you can get really good information about what's coming up next. So that is it. I hope you have an amazing Friday. You guys go into the weekend feeling inspired. You can do it. Thank you for joining us. See you soon.